arithmetic sequences. So objective line, blah, 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 blah. Key terms, arithmetic sequences, they have a common difference, D. That means we're adding, subtracting to get to the next number. Arithmetic means missing terms between two others in an arithmetic sequence. When you're finding the average, that is kind of like doing the arithmetic means. You can find the arithmetic means or any number of terms between them. So we'll kind of look at that one a little bit closer. So arithmetic sequence formula. You need to know this formula. We're going to use this formula. A sub n. So the nth term is equal to the first term plus n minus 1, the number of terms minus 1 times the difference between each one. So how many times are we going to add the same number to the first number? So if I have the 10th term, I'm going to take the first number, I'm going to add whatever D is, 10 minus 1 or 9 times. That's what I would do to get to the 10th one. I take the first one and add D, add D, add D, add D, add D, add D, add D. What do you do when you do repeated addition? That is multiplication. So that's what we have. So are these first two, are they following here arithmetic? So how do I get from one term to the next? I subtract 4 each time. So yes, this is arithmetic, and my D is -4. So on the next one, how do I get from 4.2 to 2.5, 2.8 to -0.9? Do I do this? What do I get at the same time? Remember to check if you're not sure. Take a term, 2.5, minus the previous term, 4.2. If I do that, I get -1.7. If it's arithmetic, I would get the same thing each time. If I take 2.5 and subtract 1.7, do I get 0.8? If I take 0.8 and subtract 1.7, do I get -0.9? I do. This is arithmetic, and D is -1.7. Okay, find the 150th term. So we need to use our formula. This is a sub 1, the first term. D is how do I get from one term to the next? I add 2 each time. So my D is 2, and then N is 150. Why? Because it says we're looking for the 150th term. So to figure this out, I go, okay, A sub 150, the 150th term, is the first term 2 plus the number of terms I want to do, -1, times my D that I'm getting. So I take 151, subtract 1 from that 150, subtract 1, multiply that times 2, add 2, and I end up getting 300. So the 150th term is 300. Not a big deal. So on this one here, same idea. My first term is -3, my D is -2, and my N is 46. So A sub 46 is -3 plus 46 minus 1 times -2. And you do that on your calculator, and the 46th term is -93. You could, if you wanted to, instead just subtract 2 over and over and over and over again, but I wouldn't really want to do that. Now, same idea, only instead of looking for a particular term number, I'm trying to figure out what the difference is. You still use the same formula. It says find D, so that's what I don't know. I have my first term. I know what the 6th term is, so I also know what N is. N is 6. So I have 3 out of the 4 things in my formula. I have 1, 2, 3 things. I'm looking for the 4th. So that means the 6th term, -30, is equal to the first term, 10, plus the number of terms, 6, minus 1, times D. And you solve that. So I subtract 10 from each side, and I get -40 is equal to 6 minus 1 is 5, so I get 5D. Divide both sides by 5. Sorry. And end up getting D is equal to -8. So I'm subtracting 8 each time. not that difficult to do. Okay, find a sub 22 if a sub 3 is negative 5 and a sub 9 is 37. Okay, well, here's what I need. I got to figure out what D is. Okay, I got to figure out what D is. Here's what you do. You take the 9th term. So I have 37 is equal to, now I don't have the first term, but I do have the 3rd term. And if I treat this as the first term, then I have how many times I need to get from 3 to 9. And you would think, ooh, 9 minus 3 is 6. Yes, but that doesn't include the 1 in the front. So it's actually, I would go from 7. Count it out with me. 3, 4, 5, stop. Use your fingers. Stick out the first finger for 3 when I count the first number, and then stick out a finger for each number I count. And you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and what do you get? You got 7 fingers showing. So to go from 3 to 9, I need to go 7 times. 7 minus 1 times whatever D is, and you solve for D. Okay? So I get 37, well, actually, I add 5 to both sides. Now, add 5 to both sides, and you get 42 is equal to 6D, so you end up D is 7. There we go. So we have D is 7 and A sub 22. Now, a couple of different ways we can do this. We have, sorry, that's a D, not an A. D is 7. We have a couple of different ways we can do this. We need to try to go from 3 to 22 or from 9 to 22 and use those in the formula, or it would actually be very, very easy to find the first term. A sub 2 would be A sub 3, which is negative 5. Instead of adding 7, I'm working backwards. So what would I do? I would subtract 7. So A sub 2 would be A sub 3, negative 5, minus 7. And that would give me negative 12. A sub 1 is A sub 2, negative 12, minus 7. Because if I add 7 to move up, then I subtract 7 to move down. And I get A sub 1 is negative 19. So now I have my first term, I have my D, I have my N, I can plug them into the formula. A sub 22 is equal to negative 19 plus 22 minus 1 times 7. A sub 22 is 128. Okay. This one's not so bad. Which term in the sequence is 500? Here's my first term. There's my last term. What's my D? My D is negative 11. How do I get from 6 to negative 5? I subtract 11. So what do? I plug in the 3 things I know, and I find the one that I don't. Negative 500 is equal to 6 plus N minus 1, because that's what we're trying to figure out, which term. So N equals what? N minus 1 times negative 11. So subtract 6, I get negative 506 is equal to N minus 1 times negative 11. There's lots of different ways you can solve this. Divide both sides by negative 11. This is just one way. And I get 46 is equal to N minus 1. So that means N is equal to 47. So the 47th term is 500. Okay, find the arithmetic mean between 32 and 98. So here's what you want to do. There's a pattern to this. How many times do I have to move to get from 132 to 98? I have to move 1, 2 times. So you take how many times you move, take the last number minus the first number, and this is how you find your D. D is equal to the last number in the sequence minus the first number in your sequence divided by how many jumps I need to make it there. 98 minus 132 divided by 2, and you get negative 17. So D is equal to negative 17. Now I know what to do. I need to add negative 17 to 132. Take 132 plus negative 17, and I get the one in between, which is 115. This is also finding the average, but that only works if you have two numbers. If I'm looking for other numbers, let's say I have 3, 4, 5, 10, 12, there's a different way to do it. I want 3 means between negative 12 and 16. So I start at negative 12, and I want to find 1, 2, 3 numbers between that and 16. So what I do is I look for my D. This is very easy. You take the last number, 16, minus the first number, negative 12. Divide it by how many jumps I need to do to get from the first number to the last number. I need to go 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Look at that. 1 more than the number of spaces between. Divide by 4. 16 minus negative 12 divided by 4, and you get 7. Which means, what do I need to do? I need to add 7 each time to move to the next number. So I add 7 to negative 12, gives me negative 5. Add 7 to negative 5 to get 2, add 7 to 2 to get 9. And if I add 7 to 9, I get 16. Everything's great. That's what you do. Easy peasy. Okay. Write the explicit formula for these two sequences, and then we're going to have to write the recursive formulas. So for the explicit formula and the recursive formula, you need two things. You need to know what the first term is, and hey, we got the first term. And then you need to know what D is. How do I get from 1 to the next? Well, how do I go from 2 to 5, from 5 to 8, from 8 to 11? What do? I add 3 each time. So we go back to our explicit formula, and we have A sub n is equal to the first number 2 plus n minus 1 times our D. That is our explicit formula. Now, however, we want to simplify this up a little bit, distribute the 3, and so on, and we get A sub n is equal to 3n minus 1. Distribute the 3, combine up like terms, and this is your explicit formula. This is what we want to do. Make it as simple as possible. So if I go to this one, I get the same thing. Here's my first term, and I need to figure out what my D is. So if I take 6.9 minus 5.7, I end up getting 1.2, so D is equal to 1.2. So A sub n is equal to the first number, 5.7, plus n minus 1 times 1.2. Okay, so if I simplify it out, A sub n is equal to 1.2n plus 4.5. There should be a 1.2 in there. Okay, and the recursive formulas are the same thing. They're actually even easier. You still need the same things for them. You need the first term, A sub 1. Well, my first term is 2. And then what am I adding each time? A sub n is A sub n minus 1 plus 3, because I'm adding 3 each time. So once again, how to find the recursive formula. You state what the first term is. In this case, it's 5.7. And then you say, hey, if I want to find the nth term, I take the one before that, or the n minus 1 term, and what do? I add 1.2 to that. That's my D plus D. Okay? And thus endeth this lesson.